Hey everyone, tonight we're going somewhere that feels painfully familiar. A suburban home wrapped in the illusion of love, generosity, and family. Only to find out that some people see kindness as weakness and gifts as their golden ticket. You probably wouldn't survive this if it happened to you. Because when family and entitlement collide under one roof, trust me, it gets ugly fast. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I'm doing here. And hey, drop a comment with your city and what time it is where you're watching from. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some soft background noise. And let's begin tonight's journey. It all started with a house I never thought I'd regret buying. See, my husband Ryan and I, we worked hard our whole lives. Late nights, overtime, missing vacations just to save enough for the big things. And when our daughter Madison got engaged, we wanted to give her something permanent. Something that would say, we've got your back even when life gets hard. So we bought her a house. A beautiful sunlit 2-story home just outside Portland. Safe neighborhood, quiet streets, good schools. Not that she had kids yet, but still, you think ahead, right? It wasn't a mansion, but it was ours. Paid in full. Renovated down to the last cabinet hinge. Ryan spent months obsessing over details. Hardwood floors, custom kitchen island, even those ridiculous overpriced drawer handles that were so in on HGTV. We thought it'd be a symbol of love, a solid start to their new life together. But looking back now, it was the spark that set off a wildfire. Madison's fiancé, Carter Miller. He seemed decent at first. Soft-spoken, polite. The kind of guy who always offers to carry groceries but never actually follows through. You know the type. But his family was the real piece of work. They didn't bring much to the table. No house, no car, certainly. No contributions to the wedding. Carter's parents, Fred and Denise Miller, lived in some remote Idaho town doing odd farm work. His brother Travis scraped by fixing HVAC units in Eugene, and his wife Jenna. Well, she managed social media for her homemade candle business, which as far as I could tell meant she posted inspirational quotes and sold 3 candles a year. Ryan and I had our doubts. But Madison? She was in love. Hopelessly, stubbornly in love. You know how it is, the more you worry, the harder they dig in their heels. She pleaded, she reasoned, and eventually, we caved. We told ourselves, we'll give her a foundation. Something stable. Something his family clearly can't. And the day the renovations were done, Ryan was practically giddy dragging me over to see the final product. Except, before I even stepped inside, I heard it. That voice. Oh my God. What is this? A prison. Every house has its doors shut tight. How am I supposed to meet the neighbors if they all live locked away like hermits? I froze mid-step. That shrill nasal tone could only belong to one person. Denise Miller. She wasn't done. And this front gate, what is this Fort Knox bars locks? It's like you're guarding the Hope Diamond. How's family supposed to visit sit outside like stray dogs? The anger simmered under my skin. I hadn't even crossed the threshold, and already she was ripping apart everything Ryan and I had built, and Carter standing there like a deer in headlights. No defense. No hey mom, maybe lower your voice. Just silence. Denise finally spotted us. Her eyes scanned the place with the kind of disdain you usually reserve for used car lots and budget motels. Madison, bless her, tried to smooth things over. Always the peacemaker. There's a great community center nearby, she offered, smiling. They've got game nights, book clubs, a walking group, really friendly people. Denise snorted. Card games. Please, we've played plenty of cards in our time. Translation. We're not here to make friends. We're here to take over. I exchanged a look with Ryan. His jaw was already clenched tight the way it always gets when he's trying not to explode. Meanwhile, Carter's parents wandered off, peeking into rooms, inspecting furniture like they were house hunting. No greeting. No thank you. Just entitlement. Carter scurried over, whispering, Mr. Harper, Mrs. Harper. I know my parents can be lively, but please, they really love Madison. Lively. A booming laugh erupted from the master bedroom. I didn't need to look. I already knew. I stepped inside, and there she was. Denise. sprawled across the pristine brand-new bed, sneakers caked in dirt legs, crossed like she owned the place. The crisp white duvet was streaked with grime from her shoes. Beside her, Fred Miller, casually lighting a cigarette. I opened my mouth to protest, but he crushed the cigarette out on the solid oak nightstand, like it was a trash bin. A black scorch mark blossomed instantly across the polished surface. My heart hammered in my chest. Madison's eyes darted to me, pleading. Ryan looked like he might snap a tooth from grinding it so hard, but Carter head down, shoulders slumped, no words, no backbone. Fred stretched, yawning. Nice room, great view, sunlight's good. Yeah, we'll take this one. I blinked. Take? They'd waltzed into Madison's gift and claimed it as their own. Ryan, Madison, and I stood frozen, stunned, speechless. Fred strolled into the smaller bedroom, gave it a once-over, and nodded. Perfect for Luca. Travis, call the landlord. You and Jenna are moving in. He continued without pause. We'll put the house in Travis's name. More secure that way. And you two? He nodded at Madison, and Carter can stay here after you have kids. Until then, no rush. And just like that, our generosity became their inheritance. I opened my mouth, ready to unleash years of pent-up frustration, but Ryan caught my wrist, a silent signal. Let Madison handle it, because if she couldn't set boundaries now, what future would she have with this family? My eyes drifted to Carter, the polite, spineless man who couldn't even meet my gaze. But Madison, I saw the shift in her posture, the spark behind her eyes. Finally. The air in the room was heavy, not just with the lingering scent of cigarette smoke, but with tension so thick you could practically slice it with a butter knife. I watched my daughter square her shoulders, her jaw tightening ever so slightly. It wasn't the look of fear. It was the look of a woman who'd finally hit her limit. This house, Madison said, her voice calm, but sharp enough to cut glass, was a gift from my parents. It's not a boarding house for your entire family. The words hung there suspended between us all like a loaded trap ready to snap shut. Fred's head cocked, a slow, dangerous grin spreading across his face like oil slicking over water. Your house. He let the words roll off his tongue like a bad joke. Sweetheart, this is Carter's house, which means it's our house. His lip curled into something I wouldn't exactly call a smile, more like a challenge. And you've got the nerve to talk back to your future father-in-law before you've even got a ring on your finger. His gaze swept the room like he was appraising cattle at auction. Travis is still wasting money on rent every month. This house is huge. Shame to let all this space go to waste. Before I could jump in, Denise piped up, her shrill voice bouncing off the freshly painted walls. I mean, really, honey, be honest. 2 people in a whole house like this, isn't that ridiculous? What's the big deal if Travis and little Lucas stay here? You don't even have kids yet. She jabbed a finger toward the spare room, like she was making a courtroom argument. Why let perfectly good space sit empty? We're not trying to take advantage of you, sweetie. We came to help, to support you. The audacity would have been almost impressive if it weren't so infuriating. And then, just when I thought they might have exhausted their supply of nerve, Denise turned that saccharine, condescending smile onto Madison and added, Besides, you're about to be my daughter-in-law. It's only right you take care of us. Cooking, cleaning, making sure we're comfortable. You know, like a good wife should. I felt my nails digging into my palm. Madison's hands trembled at her sides. Her chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. But Denise wasn't finished. Of course not. She gave Madison a once-over, her eyes dripping with disdain. Honestly, looking at you, I can tell you're not much of a housekeeper. Maybe have your father hire a maid to take care of us instead. Save yourself the trouble. I don't even know how Madison managed it, keeping her voice steady when she finally spoke. But she did. If you want a house in the city, she said, cold as the Portland rain, if you want to be taken care of, pay for it yourselves. Stop expecting my parents to hand you everything. A thick, lead-weight silence crashed over the room. Fred's face twisted. His expression darkened into something primal. You hear that, Carter? He snapped, smoke curling from his nostrils like a dragon barely containing fire. This is the woman you're about to marry. Talking to your parents like we're beggars. Since when did her family's money become more important than ours? Carter's face drained of color. His eyes darted between Madison and his parents, panic flickering across his features like faulty headlights. Madison, you can't say things like that. His voice cracked higher than usual. Apologize to my parents. Madison didn't even blink. She turned to him, her eyes colder than the Oregon coast in December. If you actually believe that, then take your parents and get out of my house. There was no shouting, no dramatic tantrum. Just ice, final and unmoving. Carter reached for her wrist, desperation blooming across his face like sweat. Come on, you always throw these little tantrums and I let it go. But can't you show them just a little respect? Madison yanked her arm away like his touch burned. She turned her back to him completely. Denise let out a bitter, barking laugh. You should be grateful to be marrying a man like Carter. You think you're too good for us? Look at yourself. Spoiled, entitled, no respect for family. Her eyes darted to Carter. See, just like all these city folks, think they're better than the rest of us. Madison's voice cut through the air, steady and controlled. We're not even married yet, and you're already trying to claim what isn't yours. That's not family. That's greed. Carter wiped his forehead, his face flushed with frustration. That's way out of line. You need to apologize. Fred took a slow step forward, exhaling smoke in my direction, his eyes settling on me and Ryan like we were part of the problem. His voice curled with mockery. Mr. Harper, how exactly did you raise your daughter? Because I'm seeing a serious lack of discipline here. No respect, no humility. He blew smoke toward the ceiling. Must be exhausting to hear her running around screaming, my house, all the time. Ryan's jaw flexed so hard I thought the bone might snap. Fred chuckled, dragging his cigarette between his fingers. But don't worry. Once your daughter marries into our family, she'll learn her place. Carter will teach her how to behave. Carter stood frozen beside him. And then he nodded. A small, pathetic, barely perceptible nod. But it was enough. I saw it. Madison saw it. And in that instant, something inside her changed. Ryan stared at the Millers, his face unreadable. Years of restraint slipping away. And me, I couldn't hold it anymore. How we raise our daughter is none of your damn business. I snapped, my voice low and lethal. And you have the audacity to lecture us. You couldn't contribute a dime to the wedding. You don't have a house. You don't have a car. You brought nothing to this marriage. Except entitlement. My eyes sliced toward Carter. And your son. What exactly does he bring to the table besides spinelessness? He relies on us for everything. So where does he get the right to make demands? The Millers stared at me, stunned, momentarily speechless, like no one had ever dared to speak to them like this before. But that didn't last long. Fred's eyes narrowed, his smile turning sharp and ugly. So what if we don't have money? Your daughter wasn't exactly hard to win over, was she? His tone shifted to mocking. She practically threw herself at Carter. My fists curled so tight, my nails dug into my palm. Fred's voice darkened, dripping venom. Let's be honest. You bribed a man to marry her with a house and gifts. If she were really worth anything, she wouldn't need to buy a husband. I could feel Madison's entire body stiffen beside me. The room pulsed with silence. And then Madison took a deep, shaking breath, and everything changed. Madison straightened her spine. Her face, pale just moments ago, now hardened with a calm so unnerving even I had to glance at her twice. Her eyes didn't shimmer with tears. No, they burned with clarity, with anger, with the quiet resolve of someone finally done playing nice. She looked at me, then at Ryan, and finally, she turned her gaze to Carter, her voice steady, quiet, but sharp enough to shatter glass. Mom, Dad, I'm not marrying him. The words didn't come with hesitation. No stammering, no uncertainty. Just clean, final truth. Ryan and I both froze. Even though, deep down, we'd sensed it. We'd known it was unraveling. The fights, the distance, the strain she tried so hard to hide. But this was Madison standing on her own, choosing herself over a man she thought she couldn't live without. Carter's eyes widened. His mouth fell open like a fish gasping for air. Wait, Madison? Babe, no. You don't mean that. She didn't even glance his way. Fred let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Oh, please, don't act like you're the victim here. You call off this wedding, my son wouldn't take you back if you begged him on your knees. Madison's eyes stayed fixed steady. Take your parents and leave. We're done. Carter's panic slipped from his voice into his hands. He reached for her wrist, but she pulled back fast, like even his touch repulsed her. Don't touch me, she snapped. Fred, still lounging against the doorframe, chuckled. Look at you, Carter. Pathetic. She's not even your wife yet, and she's already walking all over you. You let this slide, now she'll control you for the rest of your life. The room tensed. Ryan's breathing changed. His jaw shifted, grinding tight. I could practically hear the clockwork inside him snapping loose. I tried to keep calm, but the pressure building in my chest was impossible to contain. My eyes flicked to the glass sitting on the nearby table, crystal clear, perfect, until I grabbed it. The glass slammed against the floor. Shards scattered in every direction, the sharp crash echoing through the house like a gunshot. Silence. Everyone stopped breathing for a second. Then, Ryan moved. He surged forward with a roar that didn't sound human, a deep primal sound I'd never heard from him before. His fist connected squarely with Fred's jaw, the impact so solid I could practically feel it in my own bones. Fred stumbled backward, crashing against the wall before crumpling to the floor, wheezing, one hand clutching his cheek where an angry red mark bloomed fast. Denise shrieked, rushing to his side. You're crazy! That's assault! You'll go to jail for this! Ryan loomed over Fred, his voice low, rumbling, barely controlled. Say another word, and you won't make it out of this house. Carter stood frozen, pale as a ghost, trembling like a child who just realized his parents can't protect him anymore. I stepped forward, eyes locked onto Carter. For the first time, real fear flickered across his face. He stammered, voice cracking under the weight of his cowardice. I only said those things because she was disrespecting my parents. If she apologizes, maybe we can forget all this. But before the last word left his mouth, Ryan's palm cracked across his face, a sharp, unforgiving slap that echoed louder than the glass-shattering moments earlier. Carter stumbled backward, clutching his cheek, a bright red handprint blossoming across his skin. You bastard, Ryan snarled. That's for Madison. For every insult you let them spew at her while you stood there useless. Carter scrambled back like a rat cornered by a trap, gasping wide-eyed, utterly lost. Fred, still groaning on the floor, tried to push himself up. But Ryan was faster. He grabbed Fred by the collar and yanked him clean off the ground, shoes slipping off in the struggle. Let me go! Fred choked out, his legs flailing helplessly. You psycho! I'll call the cops. Ryan leaned in, his voice dropping to a quiet, deadly edge. I see you for what you really are. Even if Madison wanted to marry into your family, I would never allow it. Fred trembled, his false bravado finally cracking apart, replaced by the raw, undeniable look of a man who realized for the first time he wasn't in control. My daughter is smart, capable, beautiful, and too damn good for your son. Ryan continued, tightening his grip. You couldn't afford a wedding. You couldn't afford a house. You brought nothing to this family but your arrogance. You tracked dirt through our home, lit cigarettes in our bedrooms, and acted like we owed you everything. Ryan shoved him backward, Fred collapsing onto the floor like a pile of discarded clothes. We don't owe you a damn thing. Now get out of my house. Fred scrambled to his feet, one shoe missing hair, wild dignity completely gone. Ryan kicked the loose shoe toward him. Pick it up and leave. Fred snatched it like his life depended on it and bolted for the door. Denise lunged for Carter, dragging him toward the exit, her face still blazing with fury, but her eyes pure fear. At the door, she couldn't resist one last jab. You'll regret this. Carter could have any woman he wants. Girls would line up for him. Your daughter? She'll end up alone. I took a single step toward her. She bolted. The three of them scrambled down the front steps like clowns tumbling out of a circus act, legs flailing, tripping over each other. The sound of bodies thudding down the stairs echoed across the driveway. Ryan stood beside me, shaking his head. Serves 'em right, he muttered. And just like that, they were gone. Or so I thought. Because that family? They weren't finished with Madison. Not by a long shot. It had been a few quiet days after that disaster of a confrontation. Madison kept to herself mostly, and I didn't push. She needed space. After all, calling off a wedding, even when it's the right thing to do, isn't exactly something you bounce back from overnight. Ryan and I thought maybe, just maybe, the Millers had crawled back to whatever small Idaho town they slithered out of. But of course, they weren't the type to leave quietly. It started with an email. That evening, Madison walked into the kitchen takeout bag, dangling from one hand, her expression unreadable. It wasn't the tired look of someone dealing with work stress or bad traffic. No, this was heavier. "What's wrong?" I asked, setting down the plates. She didn't say a word, just handed me her phone. The subject line made my stomach twist. "Natalie, since we've broken up, it's only fair that you pay me back." Natalie, his version of Madison's name. He always did prefer shortening things like affection was just an inconvenience to get through quicker. Ryan leaned in beside me, frowning as we scrolled through the message. And oh, it got worse. Attached was a spreadsheet, a fully itemized, meticulously color-coded spreadsheet listing every dollar Carter had apparently invested in Madison over the course of their relationship. Coffee, $11.80, Uber rides, $1,400, Valentine's flowers, $20, movie tickets, $3,300, dinner shared equally, 12 times, $885,000, and on, and on, and on. Line after line tracking every minor expense like Madison had been a corporate acquisition gone wrong. At the bottom, in bold, total due $2,897.36. I'll be generous. Just send me $2,897 and we'll call it even. I nearly choked on my own breath. Ryan's face flushed an alarming shade of red. Madison just stood there deadpan. Apparently, I was a bad investment. We all knew the truth. For nearly every dinner, movie, or trip they'd taken, it had been Madison pulling out her credit card. The one time Carter treated the family to dinner, it was at a fast food chain. On his birthday. And the cherry on top, the brand new iPhone Madison bought him for his birthday last year. Over $200. You know what he got her? A $200 Amazon gift card with the words, "Don't measure love with money." Ryan set the phone down with a sharp exhale. The nerve on that boy. But it wasn't over. The last line of the email wasn't even subtle. It was a threat dressed up in fake politeness. "If you don't pay up, I'll have no choice but to come to your workplace and settle this in person." Settle what exactly? I muttered, scrolling back to the total. The absurdity of it was almost comical. But Carter, he wasn't joking. The next morning, I got a text from Madison just after 9. "You need to get down here." I didn't even ask. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to her office building. The moment I stepped into the lobby, I knew something was wrong. The energy was off. A crowd had gathered by the front entrance, people murmuring, glancing over their shoulders. And there, right in the center of it all, like they were staging some twisted protest, were Carter and his parents. Carter hunched awkwardly in the corner, head down, face flushed, clearly regretting this little stunt. But Denise and Fred, oh, they were in their element. "We want to speak to a supervisor," Denise barked at the front desk, practically vibrating with entitlement. "We're here for Natalie. She owes my son money and refuses to pay up." The employees exchanged glances, whispers rippling through the crowd like wildfire. Madison and I stepped off the elevator at the perfect awkward moment. The entire lobby went silent, heads turned, fingers pointed. Denise's eyes locked onto Madison, her voice rising a full octave. "There she is. The woman who scammed my son, used his money, enjoyed his generosity, and now thinks she can just walk away without paying him back." The whispering exploded like popping corn. "Is that true? I thought she came from money. Her dad's in real estate, right? Maybe the whole rich girl thing's an act." I could see Madison's shoulders trembling. Not with fear, but with humiliation. She'd worked so hard to build her reputation at that company. She'd stayed late. She led projects. She never missed deadlines. And now she was being reduced to a soap opera. I placed a hand on her back. Subtle, steady. "Let me handle this." I stepped forward, letting my presence carry weight. It worked. Even Denise, as loud as she was, faltered for half a second. "We just want what's fair," Denise declared, straightening her blouse like this was some courtroom drama. "Your daughter owes my son money. We're here to collect." "Oh," I arched an eyebrow, keeping my voice calm, cool. "How much exactly?" Denise stiffened. Her eyes darted to Carter. Then, like a gambler doubling down on a bad hand, she puffed out her chest. $2,897.36. The room froze, a full beat of stunned silence. Then, the laughter started. It rippled through the crowd like a contagious cough. Wait, this is about less than $3,000? I thought it was like a lawsuit. 36 cents? Are they serious? Carter visibly wilted. His face turned crimson. Fred, desperate to salvage the moment, pulled out a giant poster board like he was presenting at a science fair. This is a full breakdown of every single expense my son paid for her coffee, movies, dinners. He started reading line by line, his voice booming with misplaced confidence. But the more he talked, the harder the crowd laughed. Coffee. Are you serious, Flowers? $20. I've had worse exes. Dude kept receipts like he was doing taxes. Carter muttered under his breath. It wasn't about being petty. It was for budgeting. That only made it worse. I smiled. My moment had arrived. Since we're doing this publicly, I pulled out my checkbook. I made a show of writing out a check for exactly $3,000, made sure everyone saw the amount. With a flick of my wrist, I tossed it toward Carter. The check fluttered down, landing at his feet. There, I said, paid in full. The Millers lit up with premature victory until I kept talking. But if we're settling debts... My eyes narrowed. Let's talk about what your son owes my daughter. The color drained from Carter's face. Denise's smugness evaporated. I raised my voice just enough to carry. Madison bought him a $1,200 phone. We spent $1,500 on his father's medical bills. That's nearly $3,000, and that doesn't include gas dinners or all the everyday costs she covered because he couldn't. The crowd shifted, the energy turning sharp. Wait, they owe her talk about hypocrites. Wow, they tried to flip the script and lost. I let it sink in. Tell me, I asked the crowd, shouldn't he pay that money back too? The answer was loud, unified. Absolutely, fair's fair. They came here with receipts, now they're exposed. The Millers froze. Their little public ambush turned into public humiliation. But this wasn't over. I could see it in Carter's face, the bruised ego, the bitterness brewing. And I knew they weren't done yet. The Millers might have lost the battle in that office lobby, but they sure as hell weren't ready to accept defeat. That much was obvious the moment Madison received the next message. It came 2 days later, a text from an unknown number. But we didn't need Sherlock Holmes to figure out who it was from. Natalie, I've been thinking a lot. I made mistakes. I shouldn't have let my parents get involved. I know I hurt you, but I can't stop thinking about you. Please, can we meet? Carter, same desperate tone, same empty promises. Like tossing a wet paper towel over a grease fire and pretending the kitchen wasn't already up in smoke. I glanced at Madison as she handed me the phone. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were tired. Not weak tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying someone else's baggage for way too long. That's the third one, she muttered. I haven't answered. Good, I said, handing the phone back. Silence is loud enough. She tried to smile. It didn't quite reach her eyes. It wasn't love she was struggling with. I could see that plain as day. It was the echoes, the leftovers of time, wasted energy drained, hope misplaced. The hardest part about walking away isn't closing the door. It's standing there, listening to the knocking, knowing you're strong enough not to open it. But Carter? He wasn't content leaving quietly. A few days later, things took a darker turn. That evening, Madison walked into the house, her expression different this time. Not tired, not uncertain, cold, sharp. She slid her phone onto the counter without a word. I picked it up and saw it instantly, a social media post. Anonymous, sure, but the caption was loud and clear. Real-life gold digger. Extorted her ex after the breakup. Bragged about her wealthy background. Guess she's not so untouchable now, huh? My stomach twisted into a hard knot. Attached were carefully edited photos and clips obviously taken from their relationship. Carter had cropped himself out, of course. All that remained were shots designed to tell one ugly, misleading story. The angles, the timing, the captions. The illusion was effective. I'll give him that. But that's all it was, an illusion. We both knew where it came from. He could hide behind anonymous handles all he wanted, It was written all over this. I clenched my jaw. So now he's resorting to this. Madison's shoulders sagged slightly like exhaustion was clinging to her like a wet blanket. I just wanted to move on. Why won't he let me? I reached out, placing my hand over hers. Because he's not stuck on you. He's stuck on his own ego. You walked away, and now he's flailing in the shallow end, blaming the water. That night, I made a call to an old friend of mine. College buddy turned attorney, smart, discreet, and worth every favor I'd ever done for him. By morning, we had a formal legal notice drafted, demanding the removal of the defamatory content and requesting all associated IP addresses be preserved for potential legal action. We filed a civil harassment report, too. Paper trails, legal records, the whole deal. Carter could pretend to be clever online, but in the real world, we were always 2 steps ahead. And for a while, things settled. Until they didn't. A week later, a small package arrived at Madison's place. No return address. Inside, a handwritten letter. I could already feel the nausea creeping up my spine before I even unfolded the paper. It was Carter's handwriting. Sloppy, anxious loops. Words crowded together like they couldn't escape the page fast enough. The letter started off predictably. Regret, nostalgia, carefully plucked memories meant to claw at her heart. I can't stop thinking about our first date. The way you cared for my dad when he was sick. You made me feel like I was enough. Then, the tone shifted. I can't accept you walking away completely. You are my only light. Without you, I don't know what I might do. The words were inked neatly, but the meaning not so neat. Not an apology, not closure. Emotional blackmail, the worst, most cowardly kind. I folded the letter slowly, forcing my breath to stay even. We're filing for a restraining order, I said, voice like steel. That afternoon, Madison and I sat at the courthouse together. The letter clutched in her hand so tightly the paper looked ready to tear. Her knuckles were white, her breathing shallow. Mom, she whispered. I know this is the right thing, but why does it feel so exhausting? I gently placed my hand over hers. You're not tired, you're healing, and that takes time. I squeezed her hand steady as I could. But you're already doing everything right. She exhaled slowly. The fear softened, replaced by quiet resolve. I won't let him hurt me again. That's my girl, I thought. A few weeks later, the court approved the temporary restraining order, legally barring Carter from contacting or approaching Madison in any way. We provided all the evidence screenshots, the letter, the anonymous posts. Granite & Co.'s legal team had it all on file too. This time we weren't leaving cracks for him to slip through. Madison wasn't tiptoeing anymore. She wasn't compromising. She wasn't clinging to the ashes of a love that had burned itself out. She was done. Done saving people who refused to grow. Done silencing herself to avoid making others uncomfortable. Done being their financial plan, their scapegoat, their doormat. She poured herself into work with a new kind of focus. Sharp, unapologetic. For the first time, she wasn't waiting for anyone to tell her she was enough. She already knew. But as I watched her flourish, part of me knew the Millers weren't finished. And neither was life. Because where one chapter ends, another always begins. It's funny how life has this quiet way of making room for the new, even when you're still sweeping up the shards of the old. After everything, the restraining order, the legal battles, the smear campaign, Madison didn't collapse the way Carter probably hoped she would. She got sharper, more focused, more herself. Granite & Co. noticed. In fact, they more than noticed. Just 3 months after all that mess, they asked Madison to represent the firm at the regional business conference in Seattle. It was a big deal. Industry executives, investors, corporate power players from all over the Pacific Northwest. Madison hesitated at first. I saw it, the lingering doubt, the little voice left over from Carter whispering that she wasn't good enough, that she didn't belong. But she pushed past it, took the stage, and delivered a presentation so poised, so confident, the room actually went quiet for once. She wasn't flashy or aggressive. She didn't charm the crowd with over-the-top promises. Instead, she spoke with clarity and precision. Numbers, strategy, market trends. Her voice steady, her arguments clean. When she finished, there was a moment of stillness, and then applause. Real applause. Not polite, not obligatory. The kind that came from people who'd been around the block and recognized capability when they saw it. Afterward, a handful of representatives from different firms approached her. Business cards exchanged, muted smiles, casual mentions of future collaboration. But the conversation that lingered in her mind that happened at a networking luncheon later that afternoon. His name was Alex Cooper, co-founder of East Bay Capital, MIT graduate, part of one of those old, polished San Francisco families with more money than they knew what to do with. But unlike the arrogance you might expect from that background, Alex was different, thoughtful, soft-spoken. The kind of man who made eye contact when you talked and actually listened. Their conversation wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't even particularly personal. Market trends, leadership strategies, some light industry banter. No exchanging numbers. No, we should get dinner. Just a clean, mutual professional interaction. Or so Madison thought. A week later, a handwritten letter arrived at her office. Neat script on heavy stationery. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't even overtly romantic. It was respectful. Madison, your presentation last week stood out not because of the topic, but because of your clarity and composure. I've attached a book I think you might enjoy. It shaped the way I approach business and life. I hope it brings you something too. All the best, Alex. Simple, sincere, unassuming. And inside the package, a book on leadership and personal development. Dog-eared, well-read, the way a real favorite always is. I glanced at the letter when Madison showed me. Couldn't help but smirk. Well, at least this one didn't send you an invoice after the first date. Madison chuckled softer than usual, but there was a warmth to it that hadn't been there in months. It wasn't love at first sight. No whirlwind romance, no dramatic gestures. Just something quiet, steady, earnest. Over time, they started crossing paths more frequently. Industry forums, business mixers, the occasional coffee shop run to talk shop. It wasn't forced. It wasn't rehearsed. It just happened. And one evening, months later, Alex pulled the car to a stop outside Madison's place. The rain pattered softly against the windshield, the faint glow of street lamps painting streaks across the dashboard. He turned to her, his expression calm, unflinching. I don't know how you feel about me, he started, voice low but steady. But I like you. Not because of your career, not because you're independent or impressive though you are. He paused, smile barely flickering at the corners of his mouth. It's because when I'm with you, it feels like life slows down. Like I'm actually living it, not racing through it. Madison froze. It wasn't the line she expected. There were no flowery compliments, no, I've been waiting for you my whole life theatrics. Just honesty, plain and unembellished. She sat there for a moment, letting the silence stretch between them. And finally, she nodded. I don't know what the future holds, she admitted softly. But I'd like to find out. That was the beginning. It wasn't fairy tale perfect. There were still scars, still echoes of Carter's voice sneaking into her head on bad days. But this was different. Alex didn't need her to dim herself to make him feel brighter. He didn't mistake control for love. He wasn't looking for a handout, a shortcut, or a way to secure his place in the world by piggybacking off hers. He stood beside her, not in front of her. And that alone felt revolutionary. When he eventually introduced Madison to his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Cooper, the difference was night and day. Gracious, intelligent, reserved, yes, but warm. They asked thoughtful questions. They didn't pry into personal matters or make condescending remarks. At dinner, Mrs. Cooper even smiled shyly as she set a small dessert in front of them. This is the first time Alex has ever brought someone home, she admitted. I wanted to make sure it was special. Later that evening, Alex's father pulled Ryan aside, quiet but firm. She's remarkable, he said, nodding toward Madison. Smart, poised. She knows her own mind. We're glad Alex met someone like her. There were no ultimatums, no passive-aggressive jabs, no possessive speeches about family pride or control, just respect. The kind Carter's family couldn't even fake if they tried. It was everything I had hoped for Madison. Everything she deserved. But as life started settling into something soft and promising, an old shadow crept back in. Because when you finally move on, there's always someone watching, stuck in place, resenting the fact that you've left them behind. And Carter? He wasn't done watching. It was inevitable, really. People like Carter, they can't stand watching the world move on without them. Especially when the person they lost starts building something better, something they were never capable of giving. The photo surfaced online a few weeks later. Nothing scandalous. Just a candid shot of Madison and Alex standing side by side at a business event, his hand barely resting at the small of her back. Smiles, easy conversation. They looked happy, effortlessly so. But it wasn't the image itself that caused the stir. It was the last name attached to it. Cooper. In certain business circles, that name opened doors. In others, it slammed them shut. It carried weight, legacy. The kind of family that didn't shout their influence, they whispered it, and people still listened. It didn't take long for that photo to make its way around industry events, social media groups, LinkedIn threads. Whispers started circulating. Madison, the woman who walked away from a dysfunctional engagement, was now quietly dating Alex Cooper. And with those whispers came the storm. It was a Wednesday evening when it happened. Madison had just finished work. The sky was already that deep, fading blue that only late fall in Oregon can deliver. She stepped out of the building, keys and handbag slung over her shoulder. And there, lurking by the entrance like a bad memory, stood Carter. His face was pale, jaw tight, shoulders hunched, like he'd been waiting there for hours, stewing in his own bitterness. The moment he saw her, he stepped forward, his voice low, raw, burning with resentment. "So this is it?" he sneered. "You dumped me," and ran straight into another man's arms. Madison didn't flinch. She didn't cower, didn't scramble to explain. She met his eyes, calm and unwavering. "Carter, walk away. You have no right to question me." His nostrils flared, hands clenched at his sides. "You were planning this all along, weren't you? You were already with him when you were still with me." Her voice sharpened to steel. "You need to stop. I have a restraining order against you. If you're following me, I'll call the police." His face twitched. His bravado cracked for half a second, but Carter never did know when to back down. And then, another presence stepped in. A figure approached from the parking lot, calm, steady footsteps cutting through the tension like a knife. Alex? He didn't rush. He didn't posture. His expression was unreadable, but his presence alone shifted the entire atmosphere. Alex moved beside Madison, his hand brushing lightly against her elbow. Not possessive, just there. "I don't know who you are," Alex said, voice even quiet but firm. "But if you take one more step toward her, I'll call the police myself." Carter's eyes darted between them, momentarily startled. He hadn't noticed Alex arrive, and clearly, he hadn't expected this confrontation. "You're the new boyfriend," Carter spat, trying to regain footing. His tone turned mocking, but it lacked the venom it once held. "You think you're better than me?" Alex didn't bite. "It doesn't matter who I am," he replied calmly. "What matters is that you understand she is no longer someone you can hurt. No yelling, no dramatic posturing. Just words. Quiet, heavy, impossible to argue with." "And yet," Carter tried. He opened his mouth, some half-baked retort hanging there. But his eyes betrayed the truth. He saw it, the difference. Madison standing tall, Alex steady beside her. A world moving forward with no room left for him. Something broke in him in that moment, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. The realization that the woman he'd belittled, manipulated, controlled, she wasn't his to claim anymore. She wasn't begging, wasn't apologizing, wasn't waiting for him to grow up. She was done. She was gone. And worse, she wasn't alone. For a second, Carter just stood there, frozen, his expression unreadable, a storm of rage, regret, and finality swirling behind his eyes. But the world had already moved on. Madison turned her posture straight, steps confident, walking away beside Alex. They didn't look back. They didn't need to. I wish I could say that was the end of it. But men like Carter, They don't just disappear quietly, especially when resentment is the only thing they've got left to hold on to. But Madison, she wasn't that same woman anymore. The woman who let love excuse red flags. The woman who silenced her own boundaries for someone else's comfort. The woman who thought her worth could be measured by what she gave and how much she endured. That version of her? She was long gone, and I couldn't have been prouder. After that last confrontation, I could finally breathe. Not because I believed Carter was gone for good, but because, for the first time, Madison wasn't afraid. That quiet, gnawing fear I used to see behind her eyes, it was replaced with something stronger. But still, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. With Carter, it wasn't a matter of if, it was when. And sure enough, when came knocking a few weeks later. It was a Saturday. The kind of crisp, early winter morning where the air smells like pine and wood smoke. Ryan and I were doing what retired people in Oregon do best, arguing over coffee beans and the proper way to stack firewood. That's when Madison called. Her voice was calm on the surface, but I heard the strain. The tightness in her throat. The kind of tight that comes from holding everything together with duct tape and sheer willpower. "He's trying to ruin me again," she said. "No hello? No small talk." I set down my coffee mug. "What happened?" Madison exhaled sharply. "He made a new account. Anonymous profile. He's sending messages to people in my professional circles. Spreading lies." I felt my stomach twist. "He's saying I cheated. That I used him for money. That I'm basically sleeping my way into business deals." I gripped the counter, my jaw tightening. "How do you know it's him?" She let out a humorless laugh. "Mom, he's not exactly subtle. The language, the phrasing. It's identical to the garbage he spewed in those old emails." I didn't even hesitate. "We're not playing defense this time." We hit back. By that afternoon, Madison had screenshots, timestamps, and a small army of colleagues ready to vouch for her. And me, I made another call to our lawyer friend. Cease and desist letters were sent. Formal complaints were filed. The anonymous account traced, flagged, and reported. But this time, we went one step further. A defamation lawsuit, because Carter needed to understand something. This wasn't high school. You don't get to ruin someone's name and slither away untouched. The moment the legal papers were served, I could practically feel the panic through the phone line when Madison called me. "He freaked out." She whispered, a small, tired smile in her voice. "He showed up at the courthouse trying to talk to me." I sighed. That man doesn't understand boundaries or consequences. The restraining order still held, of course. Security escorted him off the premises within minutes. His face, red, sweaty, contorted with that mixture of rage and humiliation only entitled men seemed to master. But the real victory wasn't the legal documents. It wasn't the cease and desist letters. It was watching Madison bloom, because while Carter was spinning in circles, throwing tantrums, and burning bridges, Madison's world kept expanding. At work, she was promoted to project lead on a major account. The same colleagues who once whispered behind their hands now stood behind her, firm and unwavering. Her weekends, filled with hiking trips, dinner parties, quiet nights, curled up with Alex and that ridiculous rescue cat he convinced her to adopt. She didn't hide anymore. She didn't shrink herself to make others comfortable. She laughed louder. She dressed bolder. She spoke with clarity. And Alex, he never once tried to dim her light. If anything, he handed her the matchbox. One evening, a few months after the lawsuit was filed, Madison invited Ryan and me to dinner. Casual. Just family. But when we arrived, there was a shift in the air. Her eyes sparkled with quiet nerves. Alex hovered nearby, suspiciously calm for a man with a secret. It wasn't until dessert that Madison finally reached into her pocket and slid a small velvet box across the table. For a split second, my heart caught in my chest. "Mom, Dad." She opened the box. Inside, a simple gold band. No diamonds, no flashy stones. "I proposed," she said, her voice soft but sure. Ryan's eyebrows shot up. "You proposed?" Alex chuckled, slipping an arm around her shoulder. "She beat me to it." Madison shrugged, smiling wider than I'd seen in years. "I spent too long waiting for the wrong man to grow up. I wasn't about to let the right one slip away." And just like that, I knew. This wasn't about rushing into marriage. It wasn't about status. It wasn't about silencing insecurities with expensive rings and flashy weddings. It was about choice, hers, for once entirely hers. And as I sat there watching her confident, self-assured, surrounded by people who truly respected her, I realized something else. Carter had already lost. Not because of court documents, not because of social media takedowns, not even because of the restraining order, but because Madison had built a life so full, so sturdy, so real, he couldn't touch it. He could shout from the sidelines, he could smear, threaten, gossip, but he wasn't in the arena anymore. He was on the outside looking in, and for the first time since this whole mess began, I let myself exhale. But even with all that closure, there was one final confrontation left, one that would leave no room for interpretation, one that would end it all, permanently. The thing about people like Carter is they don't fade away. They don't quietly process rejection and move on with their lives like normal adults. No, they stew, they spiral. And when they see you thriving without them, that's when they crack completely. And crack he did. It happened at the most inconvenient, almost laughably predictable time, Madison's engagement celebration. It wasn't a huge event, no Instagram-worthy venue, no hired photographers, just a backyard, twinkle lights, good food, and the people who genuinely loved her. Ryan grilled burgers. Alex's parents brought their famous homemade peach cobbler. Friends and co-workers lounged on picnic blankets, laughing under the soft glow of string lights. Madison, she was glowing. Not because of the engagement ring, which was simple, understated, exactly her style, but because for the first time, she was standing in a life she built entirely on her own terms. And Carter, he showed up, uninvited, unannounced, but not unexpected. I spotted him lurking by the driveway, half hidden behind a neighbor's parked car. He looked rough, unshaven, eyes hollowed out with resentment and sleepless nights. He wasn't dressed for a party. His wrinkled shirt and scuffed shoes told a different story, a man who'd been unraveling for months and couldn't hide it anymore. My heart clenched, but not with fear, with frustration. Ryan saw him too, his jaw clenched. "You want me to handle this?" he muttered. I shook my head. Let her do it. Because Madison, she needed this. One final face-to-face to close the chapter he refused to let die. She noticed him the moment she turned to greet another guest. Her smile faltered just for a heartbeat, but she didn't flinch. She walked toward him steady and deliberate, like this was just another boardroom negotiation. Carter she greeted coolly, stopping a few feet away. "You're not welcome here." His eyes darted around, taking in the celebration, the laughter, the music, Alex by the grill, surrounded by friends and family. "You didn't waste time, did you?" he sneered, voice low, bitter. Ran straight to him the moment I was out of the picture. Madison folded her arms. "I didn't run anywhere. I built something healthy. Something you were never capable of giving." His face twisted. "You think you're so above me now? With your new boyfriend? Your lawyer friends? Your what? Cooper family connections?" He spat the words like they tasted rotten. "It's all fake. You're still the same selfish, spoiled." She cut him off with a sharp, quiet command. "Enough!" And for the first time, he hesitated. Madison's voice didn't waver. Her eyes didn't soften. "I gave you chances, Carter. I gave you respect, patience. Too much grace." Her jaw tightened. "You threw it away." His bravado deflated, replaced by something messier, desperation, regret, maybe even the faintest spark of realization. "You think he's better than me?" he hissed. Madison didn't even blink. Yes. A pause. Heavy, devastatingly final. "You're not the victim here, Carter. You were never the victim. You were the problem." Carter's hands curled into fists. His gaze darted toward Alex, still oblivious to the confrontation, laughing with his parents. And that's when the mask slipped completely. "You don't deserve him," Carter seethed, voice cracking. "You think you can just erase me? Forget everything. Walk away and pretend I didn't matter." Madison's expression softened, but not with sympathy, with quiet, resolute pity. "I haven't forgotten you," she admitted. "I've outgrown you." Those 4 words landed harder than any insult. He stood there exposed and small, while the world around him, the life Madison rebuilt, buzzed with energy, laughter, and genuine love. And for the first time, Carter finally understood. He didn't belong here. No matter how loudly he protested, no matter how many rumors he spread, no matter how many anonymous posts he crafted from the shadows, this wasn't his story anymore. Madison turned away without another word, and as she walked back toward her people, her real family, I finally saw it, the last thread connecting her to that mess. Snapped. Ryan exhaled beside me. You think he'll come back? I shook my head. He'll try, but it won't matter, because Carter might linger like a bad memory, but he couldn't touch her anymore. She wasn't the same girl bending over backward to keep a fragile man from breaking. She wasn't the girl justifying red flags, shrinking herself to make someone else feel tall. She was done, and this time it wasn't up for debate. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. It was steady, peaceful, the kind of calm you don't realize you've been craving until you finally have it. Madison poured herself into wedding planning, but it wasn't like before. No grand gestures, no overpriced venues designed to mask insecurities. It was simple, meaningful, her terms. Alex was patient. His parents were gracious. It was the kind of family dynamic I used to believe only existed in Hallmark movies or well-edited Instagram posts. But here it was real, uncomplicated. No whispered insults or hidden agendas. Just people who cared, respected boundaries, and imagine this, actually liked each other. It would have been perfect if Carter had truly been finished. But of course, men like him don't go down quietly. The anonymous account reappeared. Different username, same tired narrative. Only this time, it wasn't directed at Madison's professional circles. It was more personal. Fake profiles sent friend requests to Alex, to his colleagues, to his family members. The messages were dripping with manufactured concern. You should know who you're marrying. She's not what she seems. Google her name, there's a reason her last fiancé left. It was subtle, calculated, the digital equivalent of planting weeds in someone's garden and walking away whistling. But Madison, she didn't panic. She'd been here before, and she'd learned. We documented everything. Screenshots, timestamps, IP traces. Our lawyer filed another report this time for cyber harassment. But what Carter didn't account for was Alex. See, Alex wasn't Carter. He didn't shy away from conflict. He didn't wilt under pressure. And when it came to protecting the people he cared about, he didn't play games. The day the messages reached his parents, Alex took matters into his own hands. He arranged a meeting. Private, controlled, civil but firm. Madison, Alex, and their lawyer sat down with Carter and his attorney. I didn't go. Ryan didn't either. Madison insisted on handling it herself. And the moment she walked into that room, I knew it was over. She told me everything later that evening. He couldn't even look me in the eye, she explained, stirring her tea absently. Alex laid out the evidence, the legal documents, the IP traces, the restraining order violations. His lawyer practically buried his face in the table. I smiled faintly, picturing it. And Carter, I asked? Madison's lips quirked, the faintest ghost of amusement flickering across her face. All that arrogance gone. He looked small. The outcome was clean, straightforward. A formal agreement. Cease all harassment, digital or otherwise, or face criminal charges. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't public humiliation. It wasn't the dramatic downfall you see in movies. It was better. It was final. For once, Carter was held accountable. No dodging. No smearing. No tantrums disguised as romance. Just consequences. And after that meeting, silence. No messages. No emails. No lurking shadows in the parking lot. It was quiet. Almost eerily so. But this time the quiet wasn't filled with dread. It was peace. Real peace. I watched Madison lean back in her chair. Her posture relaxed, her eyes clearer than they'd been in years. You okay? I asked gently. She nodded. For the first time, yeah. The wedding came and went in that same spirit, simple, joyful, untouched by the ghosts of the past. Close friends, family, a lakeside venue tucked in the Oregon countryside. No drama, no spectacle. Just vows exchanged under the open sky. Laughter over homemade pie. Soft music drifting through the evening air. Madison stood there, hand in Alex's, steady and sure. And me, I finally exhaled. The tightness in my chest, the years of watching her shrink, endure, apologize gone. She wasn't anyone's project anymore. She wasn't anyone's financial plan. She wasn't anyone's second-choice stepping stone or emotional punching bag. She was hers. Wholly. Completely. Finally. And Carter, wherever he was, whatever bitterness he clung to, he wasn't part of this chapter, and he never would be again. It's strange how after years of turmoil, life starts to feel still. Not boring, not stagnant, just steady. Madison and Alex settled into married life like they'd been doing it for years. They didn't make a show of it, no grand declarations, no constant social media updates. It was quiet, comfortable. They bought a small home together, not flashy like the one Ryan and I had given Madison years before. Just a cozy, craftsman-style place tucked in a tree-lined Portland neighborhood. It wasn't about square footage or fancy finishes this time. It was about building something from scratch, together. Ryan and I visited often. Sunday dinners, backyard barbecues, lazy mornings with too much coffee and not enough time. Alex never made us feel like intruders. If anything, he welcomed us like family should. It was simple, for once, but you know how life is. Just when you think you've left the past buried, it sends you a little reminder. For us, that reminder came at the most unexpected place, a business conference. Another industry event similar to where Madison and Alex first crossed paths. She'd been invited to speak again this time as a married woman, as a respected professional, as someone who'd earned her place. I was proud. Quietly hovering near the back of the ballroom, watching her speak with the same clarity and confidence that once felt so foreign to her. Ryan nudged me, whispering, "She makes it look easy now, doesn't she?" I smiled, but my eyes stayed fixed on her. She earned that. The applause was thunderous. Madison stepped down from the stage, greeted by handshakes, business cards, congratulations. And then my stomach dropped. Across the room, leaning against the far wall, was Carter. He hadn't changed much. Older, sure. More tired around the eyes. But the bitterness, it still clung to him like a second skin. For a moment, I panicked. Old instincts kicking in. But before I could even process my next move, Madison spotted him. She didn't falter. No flash of fear, no uncertainty. She met his gaze across the room, cool and composed, and then she looked away. Like he wasn't even worth the energy. Carter lingered by the wall for a minute longer, watching her laugh with colleagues exchange ideas, thrive in a world he never truly belonged to. And then he left. No confrontation, no outburst. Just a man realizing far too late that life had gone on without him, and there was no catching up. Ryan and I never brought it up. We didn't need to. The past. It had finally stayed where it belonged behind us. In the months that followed, Madison and Alex's life blossomed. Not overnight, not perfectly, but steadily. They traveled, adopted a rescue dog with anxiety issues that Madison doted on like a child, hosted quiet dinner parties with friends, built a routine that wasn't about escape, it was about home. Carter faded into the background of memory. Occasionally, his name would pop up, a former acquaintance mentioning his latest failed startup, a mutual friend sharing a vague update. But Madison never flinched, because when you finally learn your worth, the people who tried to diminish it lose their power. And watching her now, I realized that was the real victory. Not revenge, not public takedowns, but peace. And for the first time in what felt like years, our family had exactly that. There's this funny thing that happens when life finally calms down. You almost don't trust it. It's like your brain keeps scanning the horizon for storm clouds, convinced the sunshine can't possibly last. But sometimes it does. Madison's life fell into a rhythm that honestly felt too good to be true at first. Her career kept climbing, not in some flashy viral success kind of way. It was steady, respected growth, the kind of reputation you build brick by brick with late nights and quiet wins. She wasn't just known for her last name anymore, or for the messy breakup headlines Carter tried to smear her with. She was known for her work, her leadership, her ability to walk into a room and make people listen without ever raising her voice. And Alex, he was just there. In the best, simplest sense of the word. No ego battles, no possessiveness masked as love, no waiting for the other shoe to drop. They laughed. They fought sometimes over stupid things like who left the light on in the kitchen or whether the dog should be allowed on the couch. But it was healthy, real, safe, the kind of life she never thought she'd have after Carter. As for Carter himself, he disappeared as quietly as he could. After that last glimpse at the conference, there were no more run-ins, no anonymous messages, no social media stunts. I'd be lying if I said I didn't occasionally check. Old habits die hard. But every time I looked, radio silence. It was like watching the final scene of a bad movie knowing the credits were finally rolling. But here's the thing. No one tells you, after you survive that kind of emotional wreckage, the scars, they don't vanish. They just fade. One rainy evening, Madison and I sat by her fireplace, mugs of tea in hand, the rescue dog snoring softly between us. She turned to me out of nowhere and asked, "Do you think I waited too long to leave him?" It was a question I'd expected years ago, but somehow, hearing it now after all the healing, the moving on it still caught me off guard. I set my mug down. "No," I said firmly. "You left when you were ready. That's the only timeline that matters." She nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the flickering flames. I look back and wonder how I didn't see it sooner. I smiled gently. "Because you wanted to believe the best in him. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." She exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing. "I feel like that part of me, the girl who stayed too long, it's still there." "It is," I agreed, but now she knows better. The room fell quiet, the soft crackle of the fire filling the space. For the first time in a long while, Madison looked entirely at peace with her past. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it didn't define her anymore. And as we sat there, I realized something else. We spend so much time teaching our daughters how to love, how to be kind, how to be patient. But maybe the most important lesson is teaching them how to walk away. Madison had learned the hard way, but she'd learned. And that was enough. It was strange watching life settle into something ordinary again. Not boring ordinary, predictable, safe. The holidays rolled around with their usual chaos. Madison and Alex hosted Thanksgiving that year, their house filled with mismatched chairs, overcooked stuffing, and far too many bottles of wine. The dog Harvey, that anxious little rescue with a nervous tail, hovered underfoot the whole evening, scrounging for scraps. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Ryan carved the turkey with far too much enthusiasm, while Alex's parents swapped stories about their first apartment and the terrible landlord they endured. Madison, she flitted around the kitchen, still learning to loosen her grip on control, but laughing when things went sideways. It was the kind of scene that years ago would have felt like a fantasy. Back then, it was always tense, polished on the outside but ready to crack at any second. The difference now, there were no cracks, no forced smiles, no waiting for someone to blow up over the wrong brand of wine or a stray comment. The past wasn't looming over the table like an unwelcome ghost. And speaking of ghosts, Carter, still gone. I half expected him to reappear during the holidays, lurking like a bitter memory. But nothing. No messages, no passive-aggressive gifts, no rumors floating down from old acquaintances. It was like he'd finally given up. Or maybe life had just caught up with him. The last I heard, quiet whispers from mutual contacts, he'd moved back to Idaho, working odd jobs. Still bitter, still convinced the world owed him something. But by then, it didn't matter. His absence wasn't a question mark anymore. It was closure. And Madison. She didn't just survive him, she outgrew him. At New Year's, as the countdown ticked down and champagne flutes clinked together, I caught her standing on the back porch, watching the city lights blink in the distance. I joined her, wrapping my sweater tighter against the cold. "New year, new you," I teased gently. She smiled. "Not new, just more me." It was simple, uncomplicated. The kind of peace that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. We stood there for a while, the muffled laughter from inside carrying through the door. And in that moment, I realized the past didn't haunt us anymore. It shaped us. It taught us. But it didn't own us. Madison wasn't the girl who bought her own engagement ring for a man who never deserved her. She wasn't the woman begging to be accepted by people who only saw her as a wallet with a heartbeat. She was herself, strong, clear-eyed, unapologetic. And as the new year rolled in, I knew without question this was just the beginning. Spring arrived early that year, sneaking in with soft rains and those stubborn little daffodils pushing through the soil. It always amazed me how life just kept going, quietly, persistently. Even after everything, Madison was thriving. Work was steady. Her marriage with Alex was, dare I say it, normal. Not the exhausting tiptoe around his ego kind of normal, but real healthy, I'm safe here, normal. It still took me by surprise sometimes, seeing how far she'd come. I remember watching her one Sunday afternoon, sitting on the porch with Alex, their dog, curled at their feet, both of them reading separate books in comfortable silence. It was the smallest thing, but it was everything. And yet, even with all the peace, old habits die hard. That little voice of caution, the one that whispers, "What if never completely leaves you after something like Carter?" But life, it has a way of reminding you when it's time to truly let go. It happened at the grocery store of all places. I was doing my usual Sunday run, picking up produce, debating over which brand of coffee Ryan claims tastes richer, when I spotted him. Carter, standing by the frozen foods, hunched shoulders, faded jacket, face thinner than I remembered. His hair was overgrown, the dark circles under his eyes impossible to miss. For a second, instinct kicked in my stomach, twisted my pulse, quickened. But then, nothing, just pity. He didn't see me at first. He was staring blankly at the freezer doors, as if the frozen pizzas held the answers to all his regrets. I could have turned away, could have avoided it entirely. But something in me wanted the full circle moment. I walked over slow and steady. He noticed me just as I reached him. His eyes widened, a flicker of the old defensiveness flashing across his face. But I stayed calm. "Carter," I greeted, voice even. "It's been a while." He stiffened, glancing around like a cornered animal. I didn't..." His words stumbled out like broken glass. "I didn't follow you." I almost laughed. The fact that that was his first assumption said everything about how he operated. "I know," I said simply. "Relax. I just wanted to say, I hope you're figuring things out." That caught him off guard. The bravado drained from his face. His shoulders sagged, his eyes dropping to the floor. "I screwed it all up," he muttered. "I know that." There it was. The first real, unfiltered truth I'd ever heard him admit. "I wanted so badly to blame her," he continued, voice barely above a whisper. "But it was me. It was always me." For a moment, I said nothing, letting the weight of his words settle between us. "I hope you believe that one day," I finally replied. "Not for her, for yourself." He didn't answer, just nodded weakly, turning back toward the freezer, like the conversation had drained what little energy he had left. I walked away without looking back. And that was the real victory, wasn't it? It wasn't about revenge, or public takedowns, or proving him wrong. It was about walking away head high, heart intact, and knowing his chaos couldn't touch our lives anymore. That evening I told Madison about it. She listened quietly, a small smile playing on her lips. "Do you feel sorry for him?" she asked softly. I thought for a moment. "I feel nothing." And for the first time, I meant it. The past wasn't a weight around our necks anymore. It wasn't a shadow lurking in every corner. It was just over. Madison's eyes sparkled with quiet relief. "Good," she whispered. "That's exactly how I want to feel." And with that, we left Carter behind, frozen pizzas and all. The future. It was wide open, and for once, it was entirely ours. Time passed the way it always does, quietly, relentlessly. Before you know it, the moments that used to feel like wounds, they fade into distant echoes. Madison's life. It kept unfolding. The job promotions kept coming, earned, never handed. Her marriage with Alex deepened, layered with inside jokes, quiet Sunday mornings, and that steady undercurrent of respect, the kind Carter never understood. They adopted a second rescue dog. Harvey, their anxious first pup, was skeptical at first, but eventually warmed up to Daisy, a scrappy little terrier with more confidence than sense. Their home, small but warm, buzzed with life. Not perfection, just life. And me, I watched it all like someone exhaling after holding their breath for too many years. But the real final closure came on a warm spring day, nearly 2 years after that disaster of a breakup. We were at a local charity event, nothing fancy. Community picnic tables, music people milling about, raising money for the animal shelter where Madison and Alex had found Harvey and Daisy. It was wholesome, safe. A reminder that life, when stripped down, is pretty simple. Good people, good causes, laughter floating through the air. And then I saw him, Carter, not lurking this time, not bitter and angry, just there, across the park, helping set up folding chairs, wearing a volunteer shirt head down. He looked older. Not in the obvious way, in the way people do when life humbles them. I watched him for a while, unnoticed. There was no confrontation, no lingering stares, no words exchanged, just a quiet, subtle realization. The world kept turning. The wounds healed. The chapters closed. And Carter? He was no villain anymore, just a man faded into the background of a life that no longer included him. Madison never even noticed him. She was too busy wrangling the dogs, laughing with Alex, balancing lemonade cups in one hand, effortlessly living. And that was the most beautiful part. He was a footnote, the aftermath of his choices, his burden to carry. Our burden gone. After the event, as the sun dipped behind the trees, I found Madison sitting at the edge of the park, watching families pack up picnic baskets, kids chasing bubbles in the fading light. She looked peaceful, content. I sat beside her, the quiet settling easily between us. "Did you see him?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "See who?" "Carter. He was here." Her brow furrowed for a moment, but then she shrugged. "Doesn't matter." And she meant it. The scars were there, sure. But they weren't bleeding anymore. They were reminders, lessons, proof that she survived and grew. I squeezed her hand gently. "I'm proud of you, you know." She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I know." The sun set, the park emptied, and with that, the final thread connecting us to that chapter unraveled. This wasn't just survival. It was freedom. Real, quiet, unshakable freedom. The kind you build for yourself. Brick by steady brick. The kind no one can ever take away again. Word count 100. 300-word closing reflection. The house is quiet now. The lights dim. The windows glow softly with the last traces of evening. Madison's laughter echoes faintly in my memory, woven through years of lessons and heartbreaks. I close my eyes, and for the first time in what feels like forever, the past feels distant, gentle, like an old song you no longer need to hum. Funny, isn't it, how we chase love thinking it's the answer? But real peace, it's quieter, it's steadier. It's not the fireworks, it's the soft glow after they've faded when the sky returns to stillness. Carter is a ghost now, a name that no longer holds weight in this house. His storms raged, his shadows lingered, but in the end, they passed. And all that remained was a woman who learned to stand in her own sunlight. Madison isn't the same girl who silenced herself for the sake of peace. She's not the woman who kept shrinking to fit someone else's fragile ego. She's herself, entirely. I listened to the wind brushing against the window panes, the faint hum of the city outside, and I let the quiet settle. The house is warm. The past is behind us. The future, it's wide open. If you're listening to this tonight, wherever you are, I hope you find that quiet. I hope you know the storms pass, that your worth isn't measured by someone else's insecurities. Sometimes walking away is the bravest love story of all. Sleep well, my friend.